To the point. Get to the point, get to the point, get to the point. It's the mantra that I've seen 1,000 times, if not more, from people who are time-starved and they really don't care about the nature of information. They don't care about knowledge. They just want to pass tests. They just want to get certifications. They just want life to be easy and go play video games. This was not the point of Giordano Bruno in De Umbris Iderum, sometimes translated On the Shadows of the Ideas, with its wonderful images here in the John Michael Greer edition of The Great Memory Wheels. Now, why isn't it the point? Well, this is a bit of a paradox, because some people say that Bruno was offering a way to not only understand everything, but to remember your understanding as it came into existence, to know it all. The problem is, I don't think Bruno said that, and nor do I think it's in the nature of information for that to be possible. And this is why these memory wheels that Bruno is offering to us, which he adapted, of course, from other memory teachers, these are about an artificial intelligence that needs to be productive of all the information always yet to come as reality comes into being, built out of itself. And this is the most exciting thing about this proto-artificial intelligence of the memory wheel as it works in collaboration with the memory palace technique. That's what we're going to talk about today. This is Dr. Anthony Metivier from magneticmemorymethod.com. If you're excited about learning ancient memory techniques to contend with the contemporary world and information overwhelm, and actually have a shot at knowing more than you need to know to compete, make sure to get subscribed, hit that thumbs up for the love of memory. Help in our effort, this community here, to program the robots, to never forget that we humans care about using memory techniques, because this is so essential to understand. And there are tools that Bruno offers, and he's basically just repeating what was already in the memory tradition, that will enable you to learn more and remember more and hold it for longer, but not everything. Because in the very idea of everything, we have to have the image of nothing, and we have to have the image of something in between. And we need to be able to understand that in order to know everything, we actually have to be a little bit more Socratic, more like Socrates, who said, the only thing I know is that I don't know. And this is a very, very important principle. But enough philosophy. Let's get into the heart of the technique. And it's really two techniques coming together: the memory palace, or ars memorativa, and the art of combination, or ars combinatoria. Now, it's not merely my opinion that we should call these two techniques together artificial intelligence. There's a book, Ramon Lull, From the Ars Magna to Artificial Intelligence, and this is drawn out by many, many scholars. And part of the problem is that, is there really anything artificial about the alphabet? The alphabet that we use to combine images together and place those images in memory palaces, well, they come from somewhere. And did they come from outer space? Did they come from aliens? Did they come from something that is the opposite of nature, the opposite of being, the opposite of reality? What would that opposite be? Well, Plato reminds us that the opposite of being is probably not being. So the idea of it being an artificial intelligence is a little bit suspect, but there is artifice in terms of us identifying what it is we want to remember and where in our memory we're going to encode the information through association. And that's where the memory palace and the memory wheel come together and make a kind of artificial intelligence, because by using the memory wheel as you're moving through a memory palace to encode information, what you're essentially doing is letting the system generate associations for you. Now, I'm assuming that you already know what a memory palace is, but just for the benefit of those who don't, very briefly, a memory palace is a mental recreation of a location. It's but for most of us, ideal that it's a place that we've seen in our minds, like this room. So if I have to memorize a word, whatever it may be, maybe I'm memorizing Bruno, habit ergo chaos, non statuem, non figurem, and all that sort of stuff. I'm just going to place images that are going to help me remember those words. And I may have to go back and fix pronunciation later. And of course, my Latin teacher said, you're going to hear so many people say that it has to be pronounced this way, that way. Latinists love to argue. And Sanskritists, I've learned, like to argue as well. In fact, there's people who just won't accept a modern English pronunciation of lol, and they want it to be you or yui. And Bruno pronounced Ramon lol. I don't know how he pronounced it, but he often called him lully, and maybe he was meaning it to be pronounced yui. I don't think that we know, but at the end of the day, that is one of the weaknesses of these techniques, is that you don't always know how things are supposed to be pronounced, and there are pronunciation police in the world, and we have to contend with them, and they strangely don't make their own channels about correct pronunciation, and this is part of the problem. Information is coming into being. It's always changing, and pronunciations change over time. There's the great vowel shift, there's the great consonant shift, and we can't really or we can choose the hill to die on, the hill of pronunciation to die on. But if we're going to make progress and use these tools, we have to kind of just take an action, do something, memorize something, and we can work on fixing it later if we have a memory palace to go back and refer to. So if, for example, it is not habit ergo chaos and it's more like habit, then, we're going to have a very, very easy time to correct it because we've established it in a memory palace. So that's the Memory Palace 101. It is not the greatest tool for pronunciation, but it is a wonderful tool for establishing some kind of pronunciation of words and memorizing words in order. The one thing to watch out for is that some people will say, but it's good for memorizing lists. And yes, but what isn't a list? This is not an objection. Every sentence that I said in my TEDx talk, for example, was a list of words in sentences. Those sentences were listed in the order of the speech. And this doesn't necessarily solve morphological issues and being able to utter things according to grammar and so forth. That's a function of learning a language and a lot of reading, writing, speaking, and listening on top of committing things to memory. But at the end of the day, you're going to use that information in a linear order. So the fact that it has to be in a list isn't a problem. And we know from principles like primacy effect, recency effect, and serial positioning effect that we can use the Memory Palace to recall or use recall rehearsal to practice bringing back that information in different orders. This is in the Vedic memorization techniques that people use to go chitameva mahatosham, chitameva hi baraka, chitameva mahatmayam, chitameva mahanasa. They use things in different orders. Aristotle teaches the use of revisiting information in the Memory Palace in different orders, and it ultimately ends up in Ebbinghaus's research of the primacy effect and the recency effect and serial positioning effect, that you will get more recall when you use spaced repetition in different orders. And the Memory Palace allows you to do that, and it's very, very powerful. Now, what Bruno's strongest point, I think, is in this artificial intelligence is not so much the Memory Palace. He basically just repeats the standard teaching. But in using the memory wheels, he's offering us a way to generate more images at a variety of stages or levels. So one of them is just the very basic sound association. So in one of my memory detective novels that isn't finished yet, it's called Vitamin X. In the first version and the second version, the bad guy was named Astarte. And to memorize that name, it's very simple to just use a sound association. So it has Astarte in it, and maybe we use a giant star to help remember that name. But Bruno would point out that you don't just have to have sound associations. You may look on your memory wheel and go, okay, so on the letter S, I have a movie, A Star is Born, right? And you could use that to help you have a larger association. It's still a sound association, but it's also now an image association because there are going to be actors in that movie. But then he would go one step further and say, what is the category, the concept to which A Star is Born belongs? Now, when I've taught this to various people, they've said, Well, I don't know A Star is Born. And so I say, well, what about Star Trek? I don't know that either. But let's say you do know Star Trek. Well, in this level of association, you would say Star Trek belongs to the genre of sci-fi. And if you really know your stuff, you also say, well, it's actually a Western in space. So it belongs to the genre of sci-fi and the Western at the same time. And you can use that because you could think of different ideas that can help you now memorize a word like Astarte. For example, it's often the case that a sheriff will have a star badge. And now that's an additional image, but it's coming from the conceptual or the categorical mode. This is artificial intelligence, so to speak, because you're using your wheel of associations and then you're deriving, you're producing, you're computing in order to produce associations that are stronger. They're less direct in some sense, but they're also more to the point because they're multi-layered now. Astarte is not just A Star is Born, it's not just Star Trek or Star Wars, it's the star on a sheriff's badge. Now, again, you have the problem. What if I don't know Star Trek? What if I don't know Star Wars? Well, what if you know Spider-Man, right? Well, you might be thinking, ooh, well, I don't know. Well, the Marvel Universe, right? You know that. And the Marvel Universe sold all the rights to Disney, I think. And now it's filled with movie stars, right? And then you could think, okay, Astarte. And then you go, oh, yeah, Aunt May, played by Marissa Tomei. Is that right? Marissa Tomei, I think. So now Astarte Tomei from Star. She is the star in some of the Spider movies who plays Aunt May, Astarte, Marissa Tomei. Now we have sound again, but we came at it from the conceptual level by pushing. And you may say, but I don't know Spider-Man. And at some point you get into a point where, you know, you're just pushing the learned helplessness. There is a practice here. It's a technique. It's a tool. And if you use it and practice it, your mind will open up and you will become skilled at it. You just have to start somewhere. And I would suggest beginning anywhere. In any case, the point never comes in information. And I think that a lot of people, they struggle with these books because they're trying to find the point. But the point is that there is no point. Being is coming into being. It's built out of itself. And Bruno was all about infinity and dealing with the fact that one piece of information, basically, as soon as you know it, opens up in, like a hydra, 5 more lines of thought to pursue. So what are you going to do? Are you going to sit there and, you know, go, oh, I can't take it. I can't find the point. It's never getting to the point. It's going wild. It's crazy. Or are you going to just use the tools on hand to take action and then take some more action and take some more action and get enough going where you can start to see the connections between these things? Because the idea of everything really is the journey. It's the adventure. Can you reach as much as possible but respect what information really is as something that is expansive? Nobody can know it all, and you have to start to have comfort and relaxation, knowing that, at least in Bruno's theory, that you are connected to the adventure itself. And he says at the end of Sigillus Sigillorum, or the Seal of Seals, that, you know, you've got this choice. You can accept that everything is already one. You are already connected with the oneness that you seek, or you can constantly repel it with ideas of lack or scarcity or not being connected to the source, when in fact, what else could you be except for the source itself? It's that Platonic idea that the opposite of being is not non-being. And philosophically, here's something you can practice memorizing if you like. Ontology is the study of being, and it would theoretically suggest that there is oneness at the core, because if ontology can't arrive at the nature of what being is, that would be because there needs to be an ontology of what ontology itself is, which is like turtles all the way down. And that may be what it is. That still, though, points to the idea that we have the ideas that we have, and they are full and complete in our minds now, relative to how trained our minds are to be able to respond in the moment and be prepared to learn. So this is the key. If you like this kind of information, again, get subscribed, hit that thumbs up. And as a final sort of point here, I think that what Bruno is doing is continuing Socrates' project of making you prepared to be able to defend yourself. I'll be covering that in a video very soon, probably the next video on this channel. But if you want more in greater detail, I suggest that you stick around, and somewhere on the screen will be my video about the chaos memory palace of Giordano Bruno, which I encourage you to watch next.